Hello everyone, welcome to the 194th episode of the Spiritual Brainstorm. In this video, I'll do a commentary on an interview of Michael Levin by Curt Jaimungal from the Theories of Everything channel, which really super interesting discussions every time. I really recommend that you check out all of the brilliant speakers that appear on Curt's channel. Here I'll just comment on a few things that they were talking about to provide perspective. Another perspective on some of the topics that they talk about. So the first thing is Michael talks about the fact that they have found, like in trying to judge what is intelligent or what is conscious or what is living or dead, that you find intelligence in problem solving, even in very small agents and very small units that we would not out of the bat say are intelligent. And what he's saying is basically that we should be a bit modest in assigning intelligence to different things. And while I do agree with that kind of general approach, what I do want to stress is that maybe we are responsible for the intelligence that is being displayed here. And think about this thought experiment. Imagine if aliens decided to do experiments on us from their spaceships, hovering above Earth. They would trigger events that would be completely original or new, or that we would have never encountered before. And, let's say that they were just observing us from afar, and they were thinking, these humans, they're very mechanical, they're very simple beings, they don't have that much intelligence. But then, because they triggered very original or unforeseen events via the experiment, the humans that have that experience, imagine like you see starships drop down from the sky or something, some event that has never occurred before, that triggers original kinds of behaviors and reactions that you would have never displayed as a human before the original experience took place. And so we shouldn't underestimate the fact that in much the same way, we may be triggering intelligent behaviors because of our interaction with those small agents. And it's this effect of the observer, basically, or the fact that when you run experiments on biology, that's what you're doing. Your biology is almost like surprised by the event that it is faced with, because it is manifested artificially by an intelligent being like you, which means that the environment that they're used to, the cause and effect kind of events or experiences that they're used to, all of that causality sort of collapses because there's an event that is dropped down upon their experience from a seemingly higher dimension that they don't comprehend or understand. And so it's the same as the sun basically suddenly unveil. Like, for instance, when humans carry out random interactions in our reality and don't really pay attention to all the bacteria that are right now swimming around me here in this room or that are on this table, then they, in my mind, what these small agents perceive is just noise. Much the same as the sun, that is sending us, bombarding us with all kinds of, solar wind and particles and whatever. But when you carry out specific, deliberate experiments on these smaller agents, then it's as if the sun suddenly, opened its eyes and then started shouting at us like, hello, humans, here I am, or started to send patterns or recognizable signals directly towards us, deliberately directed towards us. And it's the moment where you kind of realize, wait a minute, this reality is so weird. There's something new or strange happening here. And that is what's responsible for triggering this kind of new, experience, state, whatever you want to call it. And so in that sense, just the recognition of the observer effect, and in this case, the experimenter effect, where we almost imbue these smaller agents with more intelligence because we create these experiments to test their higher intelligence. See what I mean? There's another interesting thought experiment that Michael talks about. It's these two neurons that are talking, and one neuron says, oh, this reality is all mechanical, is just cause and effect. We are the highest order, kind of most intelligent, there's nothing above us. And the second neuron says, no, I think there's a pattern here. I think there's a higher kind of being that is trying to tell us something. We're part of something greater. And I have a little bit of a problem with that thought experiment, because what would happen is if all of the neurons were convinced that the first version of the reality was true, that is, that there's nothing higher than them, that there's nothing above them, creating this meta-coherence or creating these happy coincidences where things sort of click into place, then what would happen at the human level is that you would have instant brain aneurysm and you would die, and then all of those cells that thought that they were not part of something bigger would say, you see, we were right. There isn't anything above us. Look, everything is decomposing. There's no... And if every single neuron, on the contrary, believed the second alternative, then they would have also the proof of that experience via all of these synchronicities and coincidences. And what I mean is here, empiricism can't really help us, and that's where I really struggle with people that are still believing that there can be empirical proof that we're part of something greater. It is that ultimately what will bring us proof is when every single human is 100% convinced and believes that they are part of a collective or something bigger, acts accordingly, that is, acts according to that kind of belief, and then magically, that you start getting proof of that. But if every single human acts on the premise that they're not part of something greater, then they'll also have the proof of that, because that is as if inside your body, every single cell started to resume their life as if they were not part of something greater than they are. And that would mean generalized cancer, and you would die within a matter of minutes or hours or whatever. And so there's this self-fulfilling prophecy component to this thought experiment. Now, what's most interesting is what happens when you are in kind of in between stages or states, which is what I believe our situation is as humanity, which is you're neither unicellular organisms that are separated in a swamp, nor are you yet part of a fully developed functioning global organism, but let's say you're a neuron inside the brain of a developing baby that is like 4 or 5 months old. And at that stage, things are still very linear in terms of causality. That is, there's a telos that is piloting the growth of certain organs in a very methodic and well-staged biological way, which is orchestrated in a way that it wouldn't appear yet magical or with these synchronicities and all that stuff. That is, the cells in the body of a baby could say, no, this is just our natural development. This is just, we're just creating these institutions, like humans would create governments or institutions or higher order kind of systems, like the internet or whatever, but wouldn't yet call it an organ and wouldn't yet call the interconnectedness of all those different systems, like the internet with the monetary system, with all this stuff, with AI, as an intelligence or events that are beyond their understanding, that are some kind of at a meta level. Because understand that you as a human, when you dance, for instance, that triggers billions of biochemical and bioelectric signals and states inside your body that are unexplainable at the level of biology. But while you're still in gestation in your mother's womb, there isn't much evidence that you're part of a global organism. The baby is pretty much still. It's not really sending any intelligible or intelligent or higher or more or wise kind of signals to the body parts yet. And so at that point, you might have a kind of in between where parts of the cells don't believe they're part of something global or whatever. They're just thinking this is just normal. Part of them believe that it's the second scenario. And, in that sense, it's important that, how should I say this? It's not about empirical evidence of whether you are part of a global organism or not. It's about realizing that there are only two alternatives. Either most of the cells inside that body switch to the belief that they're part of a global collective organism, and that manifests as the birth of a fully formed, fully fledged, a living baby or organism, or all the cells say, no, this is not the case. And then it's the birth of a stillborn baby, which is dead. And so I think this is where there's this tinkering we're on a razor's edge, basically, where it's not about empirically proving either or those two alternatives, but realize that we have a choice right now of one or another experience, either being part of something, a global collective intelligence that has a mind of its own in a certain way, or to decay into, all of the things that people are talking about, like, civilization collapse and all these terrible scenarios that are being announced, which is exactly what the cells inside a stillborn baby would experience, like a collapse of a civilization, a global civilization of cells. Then there was also the discussion of whether God is an agent, that is, it's capable of acting in the world. And here I would answer with an unequivocal no. That is, God is either the ultimate agent, but ultimate in the sense that God can only act through sub-agents such as humans or such as living cells, but not directly. Because when you are the ultimate agent that can manifest or do anything, it is the same as being a powerless agent capable of doing nothing. Because when you're capable of doing anything, then there is no action that is preferable, that is better in any kind of given way than any other action. All actions are the same, because if you're omniscient, omnipotent, immortal, eternal, and all those things, then you don't care whether you choose to eat vanilla ice cream or chocolate ice cream. Only when you're in a limited kind of state, artificially limited state, do you have agential powers, that is, you actually want to take one action over another. And so that's where, again, when absolutes just basically meet. And so in the absolute, an absolute agent is an absolute non-agent at the same time. But this is, of course, the highest level of God. But I would say that there are also intermediary level of gods, which is basically collective thought forms of what humanity believed is God at some point in time, which aggregate, and then that thought form can have agential powers of its own in trying to manipulate humans into carrying out certain actions on its behalf, kind of a feedback loop. So that's for God being an agent. Now, again, there was also this talk about whether the weather is conscious. And this ties back to the two neurons speaking and being part of a global organism or not. It is not that the weather is or isn't conscious. It is that it will be infused with consciousness if humans start acting like they're part of a global organism, global collective organism. Otherwise, it isn't conscious. And it's exactly the same for the cells inside a baby. For instance, the cells inside a healthy living baby would say, wow, the climate is conscious. Look, there's all these corrective mechanisms that make sure that the temperature inside this, that we experience as being on the outside, is always consistently 36.5 degrees. wow, amazing. There's this auto-stabilizing mechanism whereby, it almost intelligently decides to either warm up or cool down, the temperature, so that we're always super comfortable, and that this climate, this inner climate inside the body, is stable. But if the cells behave as if they were not part of a global organism, then that would first manifest as fever. So the baby would be sick, quote unquote, which would manifest as a fever, as an overheating of the global organism, and then eventually it would die. And then obviously the temperature would be even more chaotic and totally not conscious. And so it's by creating a sort of a consciousness envelope around this planet, where it's almost as if the planet acquired all the necessary mechanisms to act on its own climate and create a perfectly stable and balanced weather, which would be conducive to life. So again, this is basically how biology transcends itself, by creating humans and they make decisions on how to manipulate the biology within. So for instance, Michael Levin does this all the time, right? All of the biochemical research on aging, on how the cells work, on regenerative medicine and all that stuff. This is humans calling the shots, and it's humans between themselves that debate the responsible and ethical uses of these technologies. It's not individual scientific-minded cells inside our bodies that are developing all these biotechnological tools to upgrade themselves. It's the higher order kind of organism that does this. And so by the same token, the way that this planet will be able to consciously manipulate its own chemistry, if you will, that is not really up to us. We don't have the wisdom, quote unquote, to make those decisions. We have the wisdom to make decisions on how to manipulate this body within, and saying, okay, a chip in the brain, that's too much, or that's fine. And again, this is all, it's all up in the air. I'm not saying that one way of manipulating our internal biology is better than another. I'm just saying that we are correctly equipped to have those debates, but our cells are not, right? You could say that our cells, if they had to make those decisions, they would probably make very bad decisions, very poor decisions, because they do not have access to the same kind of higher level thinking of how will this impact, humanity in 100 years or 200 years or whatever. That's what we're supposed to reach as a kind of collective wisdom. And so by the same token, normally this planet becoming self-aware through AI, humans, and all the collective intelligence that is here interconnected, kind of like neurons in the brain, would have also a higher perspective in projecting itself into the future, maybe 2 or 3 centuries from now, and understanding what would happen if it would devise certain ways of manipulating its own chemistry in one way or another. That's also something that was discussed, is whether the weather is conscious. And to me, it's not a binary answer. It's obviously dependent on the collective behavior and beliefs of humans, and whether we behave, all of us, under the assumption that this planet is intelligent. And then you start to see signs of that, obviously. Again, the same self-fulfilling prophecy kind of mechanism. Then there was also talk about cancer and bioelectricity, and the fact that, which is also fascinating, the fact that if you force a certain number of cells that believe that they're not part of the body anymore, they're not part of this integration of this whole bioelectric bodily grid, and treat the body as being the outside environment, and then growing into that environment and treating it as hostile, that you can force those severed cells from the body via bioelectricity to remake the connection with the body, and then they stop behaving like a cancer. But at the same time, Michael Levin also discusses these cases in hypnotherapy where, there were these therapists that were using hypnosis, which was super successful in healing skin problems in patients, very rare skin problems. And, the symptoms disappeared very quickly, which was almost like a miracle. But then the persons carrying out the hypnosis noticed that these patients would have other problems that would spring up. And it's almost like you're playing whack-a-mole. Basically, you have a body that manifests a certain illness here, and you whack it, with a hammer, then it disappears, but then there's something else that pops out. And, this brings me back to the Hippocratic Oath and the Hippocrat and his quote saying, before you heal anyone, you have to make sure that they actually want to stop the behavior that caused the illness in the first place. And so, again, keeping with the belief that we are in an intelligent universe, not a dumb mechanical one, then cancer is not random. It doesn't appear randomly. It's not like there's this, just a stroke of bad luck and you develop a cancer, which is purely mechanical, like billiard balls bouncing off of each other and, somebody gets cancer, somebody doesn't. But the severance of that link of the different cells to other cells in the body might just be a physiological manifestation of a split in a person's psyche, basically. So if you entertain very dark ideas, for instance, about yourself, or you're not capable of integrating certain traumas or parts of yourself in your psyche, in your psychological dimension, then the problem trickles down into your body, and then it manifests that split inside your body, and then it's your body's job to sort of resolve that tension. So what is not resolved at your human level, at your human layer of cognition and your psyche, then trickles down into your body and manifests as bodily symptoms. And so what might be responsible for those cells severing the link from the body in the first place is an unresolved split or failure to reconcile certain parts of yourself with other parts of yourself, and then that manifests as cancer. And I'm thinking specifically, for instance, of an example of this guy, I think it was Thomas Mellon Benedict, that said that he had a near-death experience, and what his problem was is that he had severe brain cancer. And when he had his near-death experience, he was shown that his brain cancer was triggered by, notably, the belief that humans are a parasite. And that in his classes in university, he was shown pictures of cities developing gradually and showing that it was almost like cancer growing on the planet that is metastasizing in these different smaller cities that are also taking over the environment. And this kind of deeply ingrained belief that humanity is a parasite on the planet, he manifested that belief inside his own body, manifesting that cancerous kind of behavior inside his own mind. And so if you manage to use bioelectricity to artificially refuse or fuse back, those cells that severed their link with the body via bioelectricity, who knows with this whack-a-mole kind of mechanism, what kind of other symptoms or other ways the body will have at expressing something that hasn't been solved. So I'm not saying that these treatments are not have no future. What I'm saying is that it needs to be integrated in a more holistic kind of healing approach, where you understand that if you don't heal the psyche, then it will just keep on manifesting, problems, and you'll never get to the end of it. Now, the last point I want to talk about is this debate about past, present, and future and the relationship between the two. And this is a bit harder for me to talk about because, again, we're so accustomed to linear time, space, and the fact that there's only the present and all that stuff. And it just depends what you define as being the present, because we think that the present moment is just this, and that there are no other present moments of no other agents, just this present moment. But maybe this present moment includes every single moment, just arranged in a certain geometry, and we only see a slice of it, but that present moment has everything in it. And so, like, the way that I'm trying to represent it is, imagine when you throw a stone in the middle of a perfectly still lake. Right in the middle, there's a wave that is being created there, a ripple that expands simultaneously in all directions. Now imagine if that ripple is the life of an organism, like a human. And you take one point in that ripple, and now imagine that you're surfing that ripple, moving forward, because just like a wave, when you're surfing on a wave, the wave pushes you, and you are advancing on the wave. And if you display it as a circle growing, then you have the experience of spiraling outwards, basically. And you have the illusion of a linear time space moving forward, when in fact you're just one point of view inside that ripple that is expanding, one point of view that is limited to that exact moment of where you're surfing. But imagine if there are countless perspectives that are surfing this wave at every single point of that ripple, rippling out. And now imagine if that ripple is the entire lifetime of an organism. That is, for instance, imagine that the baby's growth in a womb, inside the womb, the baby, there's one perspective where the baby's growth is like one full spiral, and then it arrives at the end, and then that's where it's born. But as a matter of fact, imagine if there's like an iterative process where that baby actually grows only to be a week old, and then it dies. And then that's like one small ripple when it's still small. But that experience of that closed loop where you die after your first week of gestation, every single point from the future basically sends information back to its past, say, to learn from that experience of dying after the first week. And then as it expands further, then it's almost as if every single point there transcends or learns from the failed experience or the limited experience of when the ripple was only this big. And every single point now, the baby can grow to 3 weeks before it dies. And then it expands even further. And now, the baby grows to being 2 months, and then it dies. And so it's as if the future was constantly informing all of its pasts, regressively like this, progressively, like from the point, like imagine this is where the baby dies. And so this point informs this point of what to avoid and not to die after 3 weeks. And this point informs the point right below it. This is the mistakes I've made. Don't make the same mistakes. And this point informs the point right before it. And what it looks like is the wave expands, and it's almost like it's still something that I have a hard time talking about, because again, we're so used to linear time space that thinking in simultaneous time that expands in all directions simultaneously, where the reason why biology displays these self-correcting mechanisms and can pick from, with all the things that could happen to it, it manages to steer clear of all of the dangers, all of the problems. It's because it has experienced them just at a certain point of the ripple, and then that wisdom is shared among all the points of view in that ripple that are connected in a way that they don't really fully understand. And so what I mean by that is that there's already a future you that is experiencing itself, that him or herself right now, making certain mistakes right now, which unconsciously are being transmitted to you, and you steer clear of that. And then that appears as, you transcending the mistakes of your future self and having an experience that is more enhanced, basically. And that manifests as this ripple sort of growing and growing and growing. So you're not just one point on that ripple, you're the entire ripple. You're not conscious of that. And so your past self right now is already existing and already making different choices because you are informing your past self about lessons from making certain choices and not being happy with them. And so he doesn't have to do that. And so you're co-evolving all of your being across all of those timelines. And the past, quote unquote, is more like, imagine it as the roots of a plant, right? That dig their roots inside the soil to go and fetch certain minerals or whatever. And so it's kind of what anchors you on that ripple going outward. And it's almost like, how should I say? It's almost like it informs you on how to surf that wave, right? And that's where, it's kind of your free will there enters into focus. It is that if you're a surfer on a wave, you cannot go too much in advance because otherwise you fall off. I mean, you get swallowed by the wave, or you're surfing too fast and then you exit the wave. And if you go too slow, you get swallowed by the wave. So there is a certain limit to the kinds of experiences that you can have within that wave as it's pushing you forward. That is your canvas for free will. And how you make decisions in that canvas are determined by your memory, quote unquote, of past surfing experiences, of what you think are the past. And so those are kind of like the roots that are of the plant that are growing into the past of where that ripple was, quote unquote, where you think the ripple was or what it was. And you can definitely change, quote unquote, the past by just like, plants say, oh, but now I need other minerals. And then the roots sort of reorient themselves depending on what the plant needs to grow, right? And then the leaves represent more like this connecting to your future self and trying to garner sort of wisdom from that future that you are about to experience, informing in which direction you should be growing further. And so yeah, I mean, the past, present, future, it's not like your past is leaving messages to you to decode. I mean, that's one way of putting it, but I think it doesn't fully capture the complexity of this kind of relationship between past, present, and future. In a way, there is only the present, but a present that is continuously expanding in terms of almost like nibbling on the full potential of what your being could be fully realized. And it does so by growing that ripple until, every single point of your life amounts to realizing all of the potential that you have within yourself. And you can have just this one perspective of surfing that wave, and it looks like a spiral spiraling out, and it looks like you are evolving as a being on that expanding ripple. But that is just a tiny fraction of this kind of multi-dimensional game. And I'm showing this as a two-dimensional ripple on a flat surface expanding out. Now imagine that it's a sphere that is expanding and growing. Now imagine it's a hypersphere that is actually expanding and growing. And now you realize that just how tiny, at the same time how huge you are as a being, and you're just one little dot that is connected to all of those realizations, all of those instantiations, you say, of consciousness is just growing in this internal present moment simultaneously across, yeah. So I hope this, I'll have to do a video on this in more detail, or maybe write it down, because it's very difficult to sort of, I have it as a picture in my mind like this, but it's very hard to express it or talk about it, because our words are limited to show this. It's very visual as well. It's kind of a visual kind of representation. But I hope you found this video interesting. Don't hesitate to like, share, subscribe, and talk to you in the next one. Bye, guys.